And we will start with Warsaw. Katarzyna Klimowicz, if I pronounce it rightly,
Right.
is an academic and social activist and is talking on, as you already see, the new network models of governance and paradigm of citizen-centered politics. Okay, I got it right. And Katarzyna is a PhD candidate at the University of Warsaw, Faculty of Philosophy and Sociology, and is also representing the Organization for Youth, as you can say, and will be presenting the first case from Poland. Warm welcome to Katarzyna, and
Thank you.
here you go.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank Charles Landry for a very inspiring keynote and also actually a very good introduction to my presentation, which is actually about reinventing democracy, rethinking democracy, and recreating a new model of democracy, since we have a lot of models of democracy. The current model of democracy, which is implemented, is not the only one. However, before getting to these new models and new paradigms of thinking about politics, I would like to make you reflect a little bit and also like interact with me at the beginning and say what actually comes to your mind, your first thoughts when you think about the current political system that we have called representative democracy, which is a model implemented in the majority of the states, so-called democratic states. And what are your first associations that come to your mind? Don't be shy, you can also use uncensored words. We have a free space here for discussion. If you want, I can also give you some pictures that maybe will help you to reflect on it and represent your image of traditional politics.
Well, let's start with unproductive. Mm-hmm. Is that okay for the beginning?
Great, unproductive. Mm-hmm.
When someone takes your rights and your voice and announces for you.
Okay. More voices.
Too far away.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Speaking about people who are not in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I will also add isolated.
Okay. All right, so actually we can see that there is like a big contrast between the ideal of representative democracy and actually the reality which we're facing every day when we're like observing what actually elected politicians do. They are supposed to represent our public interests, and they should work for the common good they should represent all the society. But sometimes reality, there comes the reality check, and the competitive elections turn into like a constant fight between political groups, left and right, very authoritarian style leaders that are actually manipulating their electors and supporters, politicians who actually don't keep their election promises. They're not really interested in our everyday problems, in solving our problems, helping those that are in need. They don't really care so much about the public once they already got into the structures and public institutions. And it's hardly to expect that they will tell us something that we can consider really true. Usually these are like propaganda, populist slogans. That's what we currently expect because we got used to it by politicians. So very often we don't actually have a real choice. We have to choose between two evils, and we're forced to choose the lesser evil. So maybe it's not a very optimistic vision, but that's how many people currently see the representative traditional politics. But fortunately, there are also like new hopes, and because of these frustrations, there rise also some creative answers and alternatives from people who are becoming aware of this deep crisis, long-lasting crisis of representative democracy, and people who are aware about the small possibility of average citizen to get an influence in public decision making, and also very conscious about the system which is actually encouraging politicians to be corrupt. There are growing inequalities, the constantly reoccurring economic crisis, and politicians who direct the state funding to private companies instead of supporting, empowering people, and using these funds, these public funds that are like, this is our money from our taxes. So this money could be dedicated to education or culture, but instead these are the most popular cuts in public expenditures, and so austerity policies are introduced. The dominant neoliberal model of economics is also pushing everyone to produce, to consume all the time, to have like constant GDP growth. So the growing awareness of also the environmental problems that are coming through this political and economical system, and actually the awareness that if we are not really going to change anything right now, this is like the high time to do something about it. Well, it's our the only way to actually survive. So we have an amazing example of new political and social movements mushrooming around Europe in different countries from east to the west, from south to the north, which try to implement new democratic tools for including citizens and making them more active in decision-making processes. So the aim is to create and implement this new citizen-centered paradigm of politics, which is based on collective decision-making of citizens, changing the structures from very hierarchical to more horizontal, using the collective intelligence of the people, experimenting with digital tools which help to raise transparency and accountability of our public institutions, to focus on the common good, networking, collaborating, and crowdsourcing our ideas, and raising the awareness. Basically, this change would be not possible if we didn't have these tech-savvy leaders and members of new political movements who experiment with various digital participatory and deliberative forms of democracy. These are these alternative models of democracy which are tried to be implemented in order to open the processes of public decision-making on various levels. And treating citizens as equal partners, as co-producers in our policies and politics. So the use of digital tools enable also to empower people to create collaborative networks and make the communication inside of politics more interactive. So this way of thinking about politics is actually breaking the traditional division on left and right parties. It's going against the institutional status quo, against the so-called professional politicians, who sometimes are not really professional, but they like to call themselves like that, these elite groups of people who are supposed to represent us, but once they got elected, they forget about this role. We have a change into a community-based approach and asking people what actually they really need and want. So how to change the quality of life of average citizen. So this is a creating of a kind of grassroots democracy which reinforces the voice of ordinary citizens, which gives us hope for a real structural change of our traditional politics. So just to make to materialize these abstract ideas and ideals and values, I will just give you several examples from all around Europe of new political movements, which very often come from social movements, and we will start, for example, from Podemos in Spain, which grew up from a social movement, Indignados. Probably all of you heard about it, and its network Democracia Realia, which became a great challenge for traditional politicians in Spain, because the leaders of Podemos and members of this party started to make a strong division and make it very visible that there is the majority of people who are excluded from the political system, and they cannot actually influence the decisions that are being made and concern their lives, and against the elite, the so-called casta, a small group of politicians who concentrate the power. So in this party, the most visible face is Pablo Iglesias, that works as like a vox populi. So we have also this populist element, but there are various kinds of populism. This kind of populism is just implemented in order to show the real problems of the people, of the majority of the people, and place these problems in the center of the political concern. So what is characteristic about this political party is that its organization is flat, and it's based on around 800 circles that are scattered all over the country. So this is very decentralized model, and which has the aim of bringing citizens back into politics. And since the transparency and fighting against corruption is a very important issue in the program of this party, they also use various digital tools. which are based on open source software, such as Reddit, Upgree, Agora Voting, Lumio, or TitanPad. They also have this Participa platform, and the citizens can give their proposals of the laws or changes of the in law. And there is also a very transparent system of crowdfunding online. So all the information is actually publicly available for everyone. And citizens can make the decisions directly through these online platforms. Another example of such a movement, but working on a more like local or regional level, is Barcelona en Comú. They also grew up from a social movement, and they use digital tools to empower citizens. The leader of this party and also the actual mayor of Barcelona, Ada Colau, she was an activist, and she was fighting against evictions during the economical crisis in Spain. A lot of people just lost their homes, and the state support went to the banks, and people were totally left without any help. So she created this movement of urban activists who elaborated together a manifesto which put the focus on average citizens and their everyday problems. So how to improve the quality of life in the city, how to open up public spaces which have been privatized, also how to make real structural changes in local economy, change the model of mass tourism into more sustainable. Because we also care much about transparency and fighting against corruption, they use digital tools to, or maybe this will be a better example. This is a group of hackers, hacktivists from Barcelona who are collaborating with the local government. They created, it's the first case when citizens can publish cases of corruption, so it's also like very decentralized platform, works like a global leaks repository. It's based also on free software called Tor. We have a great system of anonymity, so like everyone is anonymous there. It's like a citizen whistleblowing platform. And the City in Barcelona platform was constructed in order to enable citizens to co-create together the strategy of development of the city of Barcelona. So everyone had the possibility to participate in the construction of this important document, and to think about the priorities of the citizens, not just small groups of elected politicians, but the community as a whole. Then we have Razem in Poland, another group of activists who have a very ambitious plan to implement the idea of social democracy in Poland. It's like a reaction to the constant repetition of the slogan that there is no alternative, there is no choice. So actually they want to show that we have a choice, and if we act collectively, if we integrate urban movements, labor unions, minorities, and other underrepresented groups such as precariat, we can actually achieve something together and make a real change. So it is also based on local and international circles. Also in Berlin, there is a very active circle of Rassenparty. The structures are based on the principles of partnership, collaboration, and also horizontal communication. We're also using different digital tools to support these processes, such as Slack, Wiki, TitanPad. They have a big internet forum to collect ideas, to discuss them in a deliberative way. They also use social media because they have a lot of problems in appearing in the public and private media. They don't have this visibility as other parties, mainstream parties. So they found this way of using very simple infographics to provoke people to reflect on very complex matters. But they try to explain it in a very simple way in order to include everyone in the discussion. Then we have Movimento 5 Stelle in Italy. They also try to break this dichotomous division on left and right. They make a lot of experiments with direct participatory digital democracy. They're structured on the basis of citizen meetups and small civic networks. So currently they're actually the leading political force in Italy, so they're winning in the electoral polls. And their platform, main decision-making platform online is called Rousseau. It's a very significant name since we all know that Rousseau was one of the biggest supporters of a different model, direct model of democracy. And so they're coming back to these roots. This platform is enabling members of the party, but also external citizen supporters to propose laws and changes in the laws. It's also a system of sharing documents and getting in touch directly with already elected parliamentarians. Then we have a pirate party in Germany, which I know that doesn't have much support anymore here in, but it was one of the first parties that actually started experimenting with digital tools enabling collective decision making. So their open source software called Liquid Feedback could be called the largest online community implementing the so-called deliberative democracy. While pirates in Germany don't have so much support anymore, pirates in Iceland, they became very popular in the times of political and economical crisis in Iceland, and they also call for radical political change. And they use open source software in order to make this idea of direct democracy possible. So just to summarize, the benefits of these new ways of thinking about politics that are transferred and popularized by new political movements. These new parties are trying to invent and implement the direct ways of participation which enable collective decision-making of citizens. They don't only talk about more social justice and inclusion, but they already designed and use concrete digital tools which can be also used by other new political movements all around the world, because their codes are available online. So you can, there is like a GitHub repository, you can fork the code and you can use it for free. So just to just to conclude that these kind of actions can lead to actually like new hybrid forms of democracy, which won't be only representative, but also this kind of new politics that is on the rise is also is using direct, deliberative, participatory, digital, and community-based models of democracy. These are mainly benefits, but we also have challenges connected to these movements, but then maybe we can discuss it more during the discussion, since my time is already over. What we can do ourselves as social activists, artists that are interested in involving citizens in our projects. Well, actually what we're doing now during Coordinate System project right now, that is transnational networking, spreading and exchanging ideas, and getting transnational support, since the basic problems of average citizens around Europe and in general around the world are very similar. So, and there are already some solutions that have been developed, and we can just implement them if we are open enough to share it. So let's not be scared about getting involved also in politics. Let's not get discouraged, because the only way to change the current political system, if you want to do it in a peaceful, pacific way, is doing it through the current system. There is no other way. So stand in elections, create your local political movements, or join the existing ones. Promote these alternative models of governance and active participation among your friends at work, at school. This is also how the reality can change. The structures at school and at work usually are very hierarchical, and if we don't start to question it, it's going to be like that. So the status quo won't change. So instead of thinking that there is no alternative, we should keep thinking that there are thousands of alternatives, but at the same time that implementing tools is not enough. So we really have to act, and democratizing democracies is a never-ending quest. But we can really take things into our hands, and it depends on us. The future depends on us. Thank you.